So welcome to Osteobites, everybody. I'm Anne Graham. I'm an Osteoware and Executive Director of MIB Agents. Today we have an unusual and exciting and somewhat scary Osteobites to undertake. We're talking with 4 of our junior board members, Ali Tamayosi, Kara Scrubis, Valerie Wynn, and Annika Vallejo. We're having this Osteobite session, which is somewhat unusual because each month when we have our junior board meeting, a conversation takes place that I learn from. These conversations are filled with things like, oh, I wish I would have known that during treatment, or what we wished our friends or family kind of understood about what we were going through. And even what we wish the medical professionals knew, nurses, doctors, etc. At MIB, we believe that when we know better, we can do better. So it is in that spirit that we start this very different and really casual episode of Osteobites. So welcome, everyone. I'm really happy that you're joining. Please be sure and ask questions like in the chat or in Q&A. That's totally fine. Before we get started with this conversation that is relevant to all of us, I wanted to let you know that MIB supports patients and families through the entire osteosarcoma journey, from diagnosis, treatment, relapse, hospice, even onto bereavement or survivorship. We focus on supporting the patient, family, and community through programs, research, and education. Osteosarcoma is a terrible disease, this we know for sure, but no one needs to do it alone. We form this community to offer hope, education, love, and support. If we can be helpful to you wherever you are in this osteosarcoma landscape, please just say the word. The other thing I need to say is that everything that we do at MIB Agents is for free. We don't charge anybody for any of our programs or support or education, but it's not free to us. So Giving Tuesday is coming up. If you can help support our mission to make it better for kids, families, doctors, researchers who are in osteosarcoma, please do. We're helping more families than ever, and we could use your help to help accomplish more and to accomplish better. So let's start with introductions. You're going to get a little bit more detail than we normally have when we're hosting a typical Osteobites. So all right, here we go. Remember, Q&A, you guys, or in chat would be great too.
Hi everyone, my name is Kara Scrubis. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Ithaca, New York, but I currently go to school at the University at Buffalo in Buffalo, New York. I had studied pre-professional ballet since the age of 3 and went on to major in it in college when in January of 2020, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in my left tibia. I did 9 months of chemotherapy. I had a left above the knee amputation, and I did 8 months of immunotherapy that ended in the end of June. And now I am currently in a form of no evidence of active disease. I have gone back to school since then. I'm living near campus and starting to get back into the things I love, appreciating dance, photography, fostering dogs, and working with MIB.
Okay, hi, my name is Ali Tamayosi. I'm 15 and I am from Pro City, Hawaii. And I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in my left femur in January of 2018. I did 9 months of chemotherapy and a limb salvage surgery. I then went a few months off treatment, and then in January of 2019, I had a biopsy done on my lung to reveal that disease had grown there. So I started IE for about 7 months, I want to say I was on IE for. And I had a double thoracotomy in June of that year at Children's LA in Los Angeles, California. I then went off treatment again for a few months. And then right before the pandemic started in January of 2020, I had another thoracotomy done at home on my left lung, and then did a clinical trial, a CAR-T2 clinical trial at Texas Children's in Houston, Texas in June of 2020. I then came home. We waited to see if the T cells would do anything for my tumors. They didn't, so I had another double thoracotomy last October. And since then, I started a Keytruda inhibitor, but that gave me sores on my hands and legs and mouth and feet. So we had to unfortunately stop that. And while we were waiting for the side effects to die down, tumor had grown on my chest wall. So I had to have another thoracotomy done in April of this year. And since then, I've been on a Stifarga. It's a form of oral chemotherapy paired with zoledronic acid infusions. So I've been on that since May of this year, and so far it's kept me pretty stable. I'm not NED yet, but it's stable, which is better than nothing.
Hi, I'm Annika Vallejo. I am 22 and I am currently a senior nursing student. And my brother had osteosarcoma. He was diagnosed in 2015. Ian, my twin brother, and he passed away in 2018. So my story is kind of different. So obviously I'm talking from the sibling perspective. And so the situation was that my parents, we were all living overseas in Saudi Arabia and going to school, and my parents were working there. That's when and we were there when he got diagnosed. And so my brother and my mom both came back to Chicago for treatment. And me and my dad stayed in Saudi so that I could still go through high school. And then he kept his job here in Saudi. And my brother had a through knee right amputation, right leg amputation, and he went through MAP. He was pronounced no evidence of disease like the year after he was diagnosed, and then he relapsed, and then he developed AML, acute myeloid leukemia, and he went to sepsis and unfortunately passed away. So I'm kind of talking from the sibling perspective. I didn't go through the treatments, obviously, but I know a little bit about what he went through. So.
Hi, my name's Valerie. I'm an osteo sibling, and my sister was a part of the MIDB program, and we really benefited from it. And while she's an osteo angel as of it was 5 years, October 11th, but ever since then I've just been really involved with MIB, and it's been a great outlet for me to meet other siblings and cancer patients and be really involved with the community.
I'll tell my osteosarcoma story, which is simply I was diagnosed at age 43, proximal tibia. Age notwithstanding, I was treated at the Pediatric Cancer Center at Sloan Kettering. I had limb salvage surgery, and I had a protocol that's called Eurobos. It's basically the same components of MAP, but it's I had 4 kind of simultaneous, which was cisplatin, doxorubicin, ifosfamide, and high-dose methotrexate. And my doctor would sort of joke that if I would just stop throwing up, we might be able to actually to get the chemo to work. And I was like, if you stop the chemo, I'll probably stop throwing up. Anyway, so I'm 11 years post-treatment, and I started MIB agents in 2012, before we knew what to call MIB agents, when one of the kids I was treated with had relapsed and was essentially no other treatment options were available to her after a clinical trial failed. So we did an end of life experience for her. And after that, friends that I had met while I was in treatment were needing uplifting and were going home on hospice. And so we just kept, with my friends and family, we kept doing these end of life experiences or items of comfort for them. And it evolved into all the things that we do now. Okay, so let's get started. We can start with something really easy. Gifts. Can you share? And I wholeheartedly, truly, really want the sibling answer on this as very much as I want the patients, Kara and Allie. Please tell me, what kind of gifts did you get that you were like, are you kidding me? This is this is ridiculous. Thanks very much, but this is odd. And what gifts were good for you? Like, how are you feeling about gifts?
I think for me personally, I didn't get like any gifts that I hated. I think there was an overflow of blankets at one point, but just knowing that people were trying to do something meant a lot to me. For me, the one gift that I would say was the most helpful was gift cards to different, restaurants where I was diagnosed a couple months before the pandemic. So it was takeout and ordering food. And I really valued that because hospital food was not the best for me. But additionally, I think knowing, if you wanted to start a conversation with a patient, being like, what do you do with your time in the hospital? For me, it was painting. So I really valued when people bought me more canvases or paints or just something that I was going to use in the hospital.
I love that. I love that they would like I wouldn't have ever thought of giving somebody a gift of paints. Like, did they have a smell? Did the smell not make you nauseous?
I don't think they had a smell. It was more like acrylic paint. So
Oh, okay.
I don't think I was necessarily bothered by the smell, but
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, can you just share, just harkening back to our casual nature of this conversation, can you share what you send to the kids who are on our Warrior Mail?
I try to I can't send a lot because, like college kid on a budget, but I make little cards that usually have some sort of like pun where I like paint or draw something, hopefully just to send them a little smile. I know that for me, having cards or receiving cards on treatment meant a lot, just hearing from all different people all over the place and knowing that they were thinking of me.
So cool. So cool.
So I think, yeah, blankets, ton of blankets. But at the beginning of treatment, I got like an obscure amount of notebooks and pens. And I think a lot of it would had to do with people thinking that I could like draw in the hospital when I was bored or just didn't have anything better to do. But I think for me, the most, gift that I put to good use was gift cards. Hospital food too was not my thing. I didn't eat hospital food at all during my treatments. So it really helped my parents out, not having to spend money for every meal that I eat. Also, I think a couple of people, well, at the hospital that I am treated at Kapiolani, they do aromatherapy. And so for me, like the smell of, I think it was lavender, helped me just soothe myself, because when you're nauseous, you're like tense and just trying not to throw up. But I think for me, the smell of lavender helped me out. And also cards, just card games or board games. Because I think for me, I was diagnosed at 11. So I was like a middle schooler who was bored out of their mind and could only spend so much time on TikTok and YouTube. So board games and card games were really nice, especially when my sister or my auntie then would come to the hospital and they could play with me, or I'd go to the child life playroom and played with them. So those kind of things were really helpful for me.
Yeah, I love the card idea. This surprised me at my first kind of round table with Osteowares at one of our first conferences. I asked, what do you wish you would have had while you were in treatment? And the number one answer was cards. And I was like, what? Like, I thought people would have said like an iPad or like a cool camera, with the like instant. It was playing cards. And I asked why, and they said it kind of removes the awkwardness of when somebody comes to like visit you in the hospital. You can actually play a game and like engage and have a conversation, and also it's one of the few things you can do with somebody and like have a conversation and you know, take your mind off of things. So true, Allie. That's it's such a good gift. Which I never would have thought of like before cancer and before that conversation.
I was just gonna say about like putting my info about like the whole gift stuff. I think that well, Ian got a lot of like blankets and like he got like a lot of care package stuff from like the hospital and like volunteers and stuff. But I mean he didn't use them a ton. I guess like the blankets was a big thing though, because we'd always bring like a lot of like his own blankets to the hospital because you know you're there for a while and stuff. But I think it's kind of like any other gift that you get for someone. Like I think you should kind of just think about like what their hobbies are, what they can do at that time, and then kind of base your gift off of that. Because I don't know, I feel like it shouldn't always just be for treatment. Maybe like if like they have like a certain hobby like reading or something, because Ian also climbed during his treatment, so like I think to get something that they like to do outside of treatment, like that kind of helps, I think. And he also liked to like video game a lot because that's something that you can do. It's like not physical, you know, like when you feel bad. And so I think kind of finding those things that people like.
What about for siblings? Like, I think for siblings, a lot of times you're at home while your sibling is in treatment. I think, but I'm also asking the question, but I think it would be nice for the sibling to also get like an Uber Eats or like food delivery something, because they're at home, like needing to feel some love too. So okay, so yes or no, and what else do you think would have been good as a sibling gift?
So really bouncing off Annika's answer, because I think like just recognizing people's hobbies and knowing that like if it's not too much work on the patient. I know like my sister had a wish list, you know, so it's just like you could get her like what she wanted, because like my sister was like really into unicorns, for example, and like crafts. So like she would have like a lot of like craft kits that she could do on her own time with that, like that kind of sedentary when she was in the hospital. But also like she really enjoyed stuff that like because my sister and I are both really crafty. So like if we could do like a paint your numbers together, because you know that's an activity we could do together. And I think for the siblings specifically, including them in things, because I think a lot of times, you know, like I'll just say like some family members or friends would come over and take us out to like they're like, oh well, the sick kid, we're just gonna take them out to like what's the adult version of there was like an adult version of like Chucky, Dave and Buster's. Yeah, if you guys have heard of that, it's like like you know, like the more teenager version of Chuck E. Cheese. And so they would only take my sister, but my sister would be like, no, like I would want to include Valerie in it. So just like that inclusivity of like if you're doing something with the patient, just if possible include the sibling as well, because oftentimes like they don't get out as much because like their parents are either in the hospital or with their siblings. So like it gives them a chance to also be a kid as well.
Okay, so I have two really good friends who are really good gift givers. And one of them we're both readers, like we both love to read. So she sent me, I mean, a huge Amazon box full of all of her favorite books. Like these are my top 15 books of all time. And that was such a cool gift to get. Like that was crazy good. And I have another friend who sent me another big box, and who doesn't love to get a big box, by the way? Like just a big box comes to your door, you're like, what? I didn't order anything. And it's full of like stuff for you that you didn't order and you didn't have to pay for. Anyway, she sent this gorgeous batik print tote bag, and it was filled with things I never would buy for myself, like a beautiful tea set, but it wasn't like so beautiful that it was like delicate. It was something I could take to the hospital with like really nice teas in it, and like beautiful hand lotion and lip balm, and just like she just like went through the store, and I asked her, how did you choose this stuff? Because I love everything in this whole thing that you sent. And she said, I just went through and picked out things that I would have liked to have gotten as a gift that I wouldn't just buy for myself. So I think to your point, Kara, that you were saying at the beginning, just to get something, not because you're getting something, but that somebody is genuinely like thinking of you and making you feel less alone, like that's a gift all by itself. So it kind of doesn't matter what it is, but it's really cool when it's really cool. So yeah. All right, good input on that. I hope everybody's taking notes. I kind of am. Okay, you know what I wanted to talk about that I think we all talked about a little bit is food. And in my experience, like I remember just being like in a wheelchair, getting pushed past the nurse's station and seeing that like dusty rose, like mauve colored paper on the nurse's station. It's like a stack, and it was the menu for the day. Like just being wheeled past that, I'd be like, "Ooh," like couldn't even. If I looked in that direction, seriously, I would. It was a trigger. I would vomit. Like I couldn't even think about eating hospital food. Like, is there like what's your experience with food? Kara, I'm gonna go to you on that.
I don't know. In the beginning, I would say I mean, from what I remember, didn't eat as much. Kind of the same thing that like hospital food really grossed me out. And it wasn't just because it's like hospital food, but it's like what you're smelling when you're in the hospital. So it's kind of like classically conditioning you. But once I was started on steroids, that's when I started eating everything, not hospital food, but everything else. And I actually had like pretty intense cravings. So I would write them down on my phone and, you know, sometimes cry when I couldn't eat them. And, but my mom was really good about letting me eat what was on my cravings list, even if they were like extremely bizarre. So,
You know what, I'm gonna ask a question that is, this is such a strange thing, but when I was in treatment, especially in the in between, like the further away I got in the month away from that week of treatment, I wanted Sour Patch Kids, like something fierce. Like, I mean, animal craving, like had to have Sour Patch Kids. And that was like my craving. But as I walked, or not walked, as I crutched or was rolled through the halls, I remember seeing Sour Patch Kids everywhere. And like when we get pictures of Osteo Warriors, there's Sour Patch Kids. Like, what is that? Like, why is that they can't any, I mean, Allie, did you have that too? Like a Sour Patch Kid thing?
I didn't have a Sour Patch Kid thing, but I did have a lot of like crazy cravings that went on for like a month or two. But then I had a lot of foods like ruined for me from chemo that I ate just too much and I just can't like eat them anymore. A good example for me is McDonald's pancakes and just McDonald's breakfast in general. I think I was on a kick for like a month and then now I just can't eat it anymore. And yeah. And also hot chocolate was made with hot water. It sounds really picky, but I remember my first chemo treatment, my first ever chemo treatment in the hospital. I had ordered hot chocolate from the cafeteria and they gave it to me with hot water. And I don't know why I just can't drink it with hot. Like I used to drink it with hot water regularly before that at my grandma's house, but for some reason now I can't. Like it just grosses me out.
So this was a topic at Factor 2020, but in the HQ. One of the Osteoware's name is Lauren. She asked everybody, "What was your ruin meal?" And I'm like, "What's a ruin meal? Like, what are you talking about?" And she said, "It's like your last meal before chemo starts." And then it turns out that you've now ruined that meal for the rest of your life. Like you can never eat that thing again. Have you ever heard of this?
Kind of.
It's like a ruined meal. I remember what mine was. I don't even want to say it because it'll start getting nauseous. But okay, Valerie, you have a question.
Yeah, I just sorry to hop back and forth. I just want to answer a question in the comment out loud because it's probably too long to type. And I think Anna could also be, as a sibling, give a great perspective as well. From a sibling, Ian Holtzworth asked, from a sibling standpoint, how did you feel as you watched your sibling receive a lot of gifts / presents, like, or receive the attention, and what did you give your sibling that really helps you feel like you were helping them out? So I guess to answer first, how did you feel? as I watched my sibling receiving gifts and getting that attention. I think it's different because my sister was diagnosed when I was 13 and she was 10. So, I was at the mature, like, I was very cognizant of what was going on as like a middle schooler at the time. So I was like understanding at the point that like, yes, it like obviously hurt that, like my mom and dad weren't there to the same extent that they were before and treating my sister and I as equals, and she was getting most of the attention from not just my immediate family, but like other like community members as well. It was difficult, especially, when you're in middle school and going through that teenage angst years and like going through that. So it was hard to see that attention, but like internally I understood, and that was just like a sacrifice I was gonna have to do, is just like let her have the spotlight, and like knowing when to step up and step down, and just really being cognizant of social cues is something I learned. And what did you give your sibling that really helps you feel like you're helping them out? I felt that just treating my sister like she was like a normal human being. Like if she was like acting like a diva, I would call her out on it and just like treat her like she was my sister, and not like treating her as a charity case. Because I feel like when my sister and I used to have like one-on-one conversations, she just felt like everyone treated her like she was like just wanted to be her friend all of a sudden, or wanted to like just know all the details of her business when she didn't want to. And I think just me like, like being there for her, like showing up to things, or like there was times when my sister wanted to see like a little play her friend went, put on, and like I took the time of my day to go with her because she asked me to, like just like really paying attention to that, and like being intentional with my time with her, I think really helped me, just treating her like a normal kid. And yeah, Annika, no pressure if you don't want to answer, but like
No, yeah, you had a really good answer, and some of mine is kind of similar to yours. So we were both 16 when he got diagnosed, so I was quite a bit older. So how did I feel about him getting a lot of gifts and presents and attention? I didn't feel like at all like weird about it. I thought like this is like a terrible situation, like you should be getting like all of it, like you're in a terrible like situation. So I was just like, I don't know if I didn't really ever think about it either. And I don't really like attention myself anyway, so maybe that's why. I don't know. And then what did I give to him that I felt like I was helping him out? Mine's kind of similar to Valerie. I didn't really like give him gifts, like really, but I just treated him like my brother, like, because like parents will of course be like really protective and like always all over that, like not all over, but like it's just like if your mom or dad is around, like they would not treat him differently, but you don't want to make him nauseous, you don't want to hurt him at all, and so they be kind of like careful like around him, and I was still careful around him, but like that sibling type of dynamic, you just kind of talk normally. And so he would like sometimes want me to like push his wheelchair because he's like, just push it, like I don't care, like don't be like, are you okay, like he kind of hated it sometimes. So I think that's what I gave to him that helped him. I just like talked to him normally, and I didn't fuss around him like other like people do, especially when you meet like relatives or like any other people that you don't know that well. They'll like always like fuss and like talk differently. So
Okay, here's something else we have talked about. And this is, so the question is asking for help, like asking for help and not feeling like you're a burden. And I'll just give an example of this that I experienced. I went to visit one of the MIB kids, whom I adored, in the hospital, and I brought, at the time Amazon wasn't like the thing to get, it was iTunes cards. So I brought him iTunes cards, and he had an iPad, and that basically played games on his iPad all day. So I give him the iTunes card, and he was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, just had limb salvage surgery. He's like getting out of bed to hug me. He's like, this is the best thing ever. And his mom was like, you have games, like you play games, and but good, glad you good, great iTunes card. But she kind of didn't understand. And when the mom left the room and I was talking to this boy, he said I would never ask my mom for anything. I already know like what this is costing my parents, and like that they're already giving so much, and that, you know, this is costing a lot of money. So I would never ask my mom, like, but I needed to level up on this game. And so I needed an iTunes card, but it's not something I ever would have asked for. And this was such a beautiful thing that this kid, he was like 8 years old, and he recognized the sacrifice and the suffering of his parents because of him and on his behalf. And he so much didn't want to add more kind of stack on. So I guess my question is, did you have that kind of experience, and what do you have to say about that? Is there a way to ask for what you need, or is there something MIB can provide to help kind of fill in the gaps there? And can you ask for things without being a burden? Like this is sorry, I'm throwing a lot of questions at you, but do you relate to that story?
I think I do in some ways. I think that, I mean, throughout my whole entire treatment, I couldn't walk. So I had to be pretty clear with what I needed. And my mom was very on top of getting me what I needed. And she didn't make me feel bad for asking, can you grab me this? Can you do this for me? So I wasn't necessarily feeling guilty in that sense. I think I was more guilty when it came to another emergency room trip or another surprise mishap that was, you know, not necessarily taking over something that we previously had planned, but it was just another stressor in life that I was like, okay, I'm putting another person through this, and I want to keep things on the low as much as I can. And I think it was important to hear it from my mom that even though I was feeling like not necessarily a burden, but that it was a lot, and I felt sorry for putting her through that there was no place that she would rather be than by my side helping me, and that, you know, like that's your kid, that they're going to do anything and everything that they can for you, and that to them it's not a big deal, it's what they have to do.
Okay, yes, so much to that. And anybody else just jump in. But I can tell you, like for me, that I had the odd perspective of being both a parent, like I'm a parent of three daughters, but I was also the patient. And I can tell you, like from the parent perspective, there's no greater job in or no higher calling than being a parent, and particularly of a parent who has a child who's ill. Like there's nothing I would rather do than make it better for my kid, like while they're suffering. Like there's nothing I would rather do. And if I would feel terrible if my child were suffering and wasn't telling me like they're suffering, and there's some way I can help. So I just want to put that out there. Just know that as much as it pains a parent that you're suffering, the process of making it better or keeping you well or getting you better is our whole life. Like that's our whole life. Like that's it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be the parent of a child for whom you are responsible for their well-being. So I hope you know that. I hope everybody knows that.
I think too that like that was a turning point for me, that it's really helpful to hear that from your parent or your caregiver, that even if you're not expressing to them, I'm sorry for putting you through this, it's still really helpful to hear that directly from them.
I mean, I think what Kara said is pretty on point, and I mean that would be my answer. Like, not necessarily asking for material goods, but like just like being like, oh, there's another bad scan, there's another surgery, kind of thing, and like also having to put my sister through that, and you know, not being home, my parents not being able to be home all the time with her. So, I think yeah, Kara, you said it perfectly.
So from a sibling perspective, I think it's a little bit more complicated, because it's not I have a fever or I have scans today or something that's like urgent that you need. It's something intangible. right? Can you talk about that?
So, yeah, I think it's really complicated for the sibling, honestly, when you're asking for help, because you don't want to stress out your parents like everyone else is going through like the same thing. And you're like, man, like, I mean, I should be able to deal with this like my parents are, kind of, because you're kind of put in that outside position, sort of, and then not expected to deal with it, but kind of, honestly, at some point, because it's an emergency. If it's an emergency, you are expected to kind of like deal with it by yourself a little bit. Um, so you're right, like you're not gonna ask for anything like actual, like tangible, like or anything. But I guess like the important thing is to have that open communication with your parents. But it is really hard because they'll be focused and you'll be focused on treatment and like the patient. So honestly, I don't really like have an answer to like how to like navigate that, honestly, because it's pretty tricky, I think.
Yeah, and adding on to what Annika said, because I think, and what you mentioned earlier, and that I think it's really nuanced for siblings. It's like, well, you shouldn't be like, thinking to yourself like, well, I shouldn't be the one, like feeling, the same pain, because like my sibling has it worse, because it's like they're losing a limb, and what am I, like, just like feeling sad about it. But I think like in some ways, like, that's gaslighting yourself, and like that's not healthy either. And I know like something that's really helpful for me is like, even though I was like kicking and crying at like when I was like a teenager, my parents sent me to sibling camp, and I was like, this is like group therapy again. I don't want to do this. But it was honestly really helpful to like see other people in the same shoes as you who just got it in ways that your peers couldn't. And I think finding like if it's possible for parents and financially capable, like just to even think about getting your other child like therapy as well, because I know like I'm going through it right now at, like, even though my sister died like years ago, and it's been really helpful even after that. So I think there's, because that affects you in like your everyday life still, like, because cancer, yes, while it's like hits the patient, it affects the whole family. So if possible, like just like suggest therapy or like support groups, because I'm pretty sure most hospitals offer them for your kid, even though like me, I was like really against it at first, but encourage your kids if possible. And just like I think what Annika was saying, like if possible, I know like there's a lot of cultural norm, because as an Asian American, like there's a lot of things I've noticed that my parents have kept internally, just like try to have open conversations throughout the thing and not let it just like burst out all at once, because then it's just like harder to like go back and fix things, rather than if we just like were open about our feelings and seeing how we could support each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Annika.
Sorry, I just wanted to kind of tack on to what Valerie said, but like I think also like the therapy and like trying to encourage them like to go to therapy, because I was really resistant for a long time. Also, honestly, I was really resistant even when my mom brought it up to me in high school. Like I didn't even go in high school. So but also like I think it's also really helpful. Like I think I know we have the whole like pairing up of like people, but like honestly I think it's really helpful because like me and Valerie talked with each other about our experiences, and it's really nice to hear like someone that has went through the same exact thing, like they actually know like like what you went through, and like they understand, versus like any of your friends who haven't went through this. Like I just think it's really helpful to talk to someone who's went through the same exact thing.
Okay, so I'm going to put my parent hat on again and, and ask you this question. Like as a parent, you kind of go, okay, I really think my kid needs to be in therapy, whether it's a sibling or the one in treatment, but they don't want to go. Do you think a parent should like kind of take it off of your plate and say, okay, today at 4:00, you have an appointment. I need you to keep this appointment? Or do you think it should be your choice?
I think that a kid is not going to receive anything from therapy if they're not willing to accept therapy. And even though they might be a minor, I still feel like it might be like a breach in their confidentiality. I think that if it was the patient themselves, the hospital should have like social workers that might not offer therapy, but could be sort of an in to maybe talking about things if it's like a bigger children's hospital, child life therapy is still a form of therapy where the kid doesn't necessarily have to talk about their feelings. They can play with trucks, and the child life specialist can understand how their play translates into what they're feeling. Same thing with like art and music therapy, that it might not be talking directly about what's happening and how you feel about it, but it can still help the child progress developmentally, emotionally, all of the good stuff.
I was just gonna say that, like, for me, I've been seeing the child psychologist at our hospital since I've like before I even started treatment, really. And I honestly didn't start opening up in therapy till like last year, earlier this year, maybe. So, I mean, from in my perspective, I also think it depends on the child's age, when they are ready to open up. Like for me, it took what 4 years to finally open up to my therapist. Before that, I would try to put it off to the side by, creating conversation about anything else besides my feelings. So I think for me, I mean, if they don't want to go, like Kara said, if they're not going to open up, it's not going to benefit them at all. But I think just, giving them the option, saying that there are people here that can help you. And if you need that support, it's there for you.
So kind of going on off Ali said, and Kara said, I don't think you can really force anyone to go to therapy if they don't want to be helped yet, like if they're not ready. But like I think it is important to like kind of set it up for them though, because I think that if it's not set up, like it's just another barrier to not going, like to not taking the step to actually go. So I think it's really helpful for the parent, like if you really think that they need therapy, to kind of set it up a little bit. But of course, like you wouldn't force them to go, but just like really have it like a concrete option there, like we can go there, like we can go to this place and you can go and talk to them, instead of saying there are people. But yeah, because I think that that's the biggest step, is like actually taking the jump to go.
Yeah, and to tack on what Annika said and echo everyone, like again, you can't force anyone to, but I think not like therapy doesn't always have to be like just the standard, oh, I go to a therapist, but like I like also it could also mean like just going to sibling camp or like cancer patient camp, where there's other people who get it, and there's also like professionals there as well to introduce the idea, but also possibly it could be, it's one of those things like growing up, for example, with swim lessons, my parents tried to teach me how to swim, but that obviously didn't go well. So, you had to have someone external to like teach me. So like maybe it takes like, like an aunt or like a friend or someone else to encourage them. It might not be directly from the parent to encourage them to do so, but just again, like always leaving that door open and just and encouraging it if and when they feel comfortable.
It's a tricky thing because like Annika said, like you have to provide sort of the opportunity so that they know it's available to them, like in a really real way, so that when they feel like maybe, okay, I think I really need to talk to somebody outside the family who I can just, and I guess here's the thing, I guess this is the real thing that I'm also getting at is I think there needs to be a third party that you can go to and just go, oh my God, I might die, or I think my sibling might die. Like, and you just to say the words and like cry it out with somebody without worrying that you're going to hurt you or be a burden or create more suffering in your family, that you have this third party where you can just go, third location, really. You can go and just like let it all go, get in the car, go home, and kind of breathe through it. I wonder if the best way is to have the space and say, listen, I made this appointment. I would like you to go. You don't have to say anything, but if you just have this other space that you can just sit down with another person, if you want to talk, talk. If you don't want to talk, don't talk. I wonder if that's like the best approach, just so that it's always there, it's always available, and kind of like with your experience, Ali, where you knew it was available. And so you kind of had to keep going. It's at the hospital. And then finally you're like, all right, okay, I'm ready to talk. Like, and then you have this space to like, let it go. But in the meantime, it's a space where you can just go and be quiet or just go and cry. That's like, yeah, I think that third space is important, but really, really interesting feedback on that.
I think for me too, like that third person, third space was also like the like being paired up with an osteo warrior, because like those are people who are out of treatment and have gone through it, but also like are trained to know what to say in situations and how to handle it. So like for me, mine was Maeve, and I could just text her about, you know, having a bad day or something. And although she went through her own stuff, she was in a space where she was able to listen to me. And even if she didn't like solve my problems, it was just another space to go where I felt comfortable because she understood some of what I was going through.
In our group, we talked about, and this was a really interesting concept. I asked, what do you think would have made it better for you while you were in treatment? And the from your parent child perspective, and your collective answer was having an intentional check-in from a parent or a caregiver or somebody that you love, or even from a friend. Just an intentional, not, hey, how you doing? But like, Anne, tell me, how are you feeling today? It sounds like it was a rough week. And then when I give you a short answer, because I'm not sure I can say it without crying, whatever I say, to say, tell me more. That's really helpful, because that's affirming. I'm not just asking you, hey, how are you? I actually want to know. So when you say fine, or I had a sucky day, can you tell me more about that? Like, do you want to share more about that? That intentional check-in is a really great idea that came from this group. And the other idea that came from this group was to schedule a date with your child. I love that idea. And I think that's, it's so in like lost in your own, you know, dark space. Often when you're in this space, you're lost in this dark space. And so to have somebody say, hey, when you're feeling better, you know, let's have lunch, or can I bring you lunch and let's just sit and have a chat? How's next Tuesday? Or what, like those things are really valuable. It would have been awesome, right? Especially as a sibling, to go, hey mom, can I schedule? And it's both ways, right? So both ways does the door swing, to say, hey mom, can we go get pizza tonight? Or can we go for a drive? Or one of those things, just to show I'm thinking of you and I need you to sit next to me, or I need just a little bit of time with you. So I love that. And please share your experience if you like, but I love that came out of this group. And I think that makes me a better parent and a better human, when you know somebody is suffering, to go, hey, how can I help you? Or can I take you out for a cupcake? That would make me happy. Question came in, did you post treatment or post being in the hospital, your sibling being in the hospital and going through what you've gone through, is it difficult, having gone through what you've gone through, to relate to your peers?
So I'll just start off. Yeah, I think it's just really difficult. I mean, from the sibling perspective, like, I think it's just difficult to relate to like other people, especially if you ever talk about your sibling and stuff like that. Like, I guess it's just kind of hard to like bring them up sometimes. But yeah, I guess it's just like part of your life that most people can't really directly relate to unless they've been through it also. So.
And I wanted to add on to something before that you said, Anne, about like the intentional dates, and also follow up on Annika. But something that I always also appreciated was like sometimes people would reach out via text, and like instead of just being like what Matt said in his what could make it better, instead of just being like, I'm here for you if you need anything, but like be like, I'm here to hold space for you, and like don't feel like you have to respond. Like I think adding that, like, don't feel like you have to respond immediately, because sometimes you get that pressure, like everyone's texting you, and it's really like, yes, like the support is good and it's well intentioned, but sometimes it gets really overwhelming when you get like 50 texts. So adding that, like, I'm holding space for you, and then please do not feel like you're obligated to respond, because sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I have to respond to 50 texts or else I'm a bad person and I like feel like I'm ignoring them. So adding that is also really helpful as well. And following up to Annika, I definitely agree. It's definitely hard to just move. I don't want to say move on with life, because like you never fully move on, but like to continue on with life without your sibling, because it's like it comes up in conversation a lot, because like a lot of people, like when you first meet someone, they're like, oh, so how many siblings do you have? And you're just like, yeah, that internal dilemma is like, well, like do you want the real story, or like do I just like lie and just not lie, but like just give you the shorthand version, so it's not like I'm trauma dumping all of a sudden when we first meet. So, and also I feel like after going through this experience, like a lot of like it just recenters what life is and what the priorities are. So it's just like does like breaking up with your boyfriend really matter that much? Like a lot of issues that are mundane almost seem like really petty, and so it's just like harder to relate with peers, because I feel like you're naturally forced to mature faster, so you worry about things that are like quite actually life or death, and not like things that are like seemingly very young and immature.
I was just gonna add on to kind of like what Valerie said about like people bringing up like kind of odd subjects. Like I'm in high school right now, so like obviously like the topic of situations are like boys, and maybe we should go hang out this weekend or something like that. And like you come back to school from like an appointment and it's just a bad appointment, and you want someone to talk to, but you can't because they're talking about typical high school stuff, which you're supposed to be talking about at this age, but you're not able to because you have this like boulder of a burden in front of you, constantly following you around everywhere. So I think what Valerie said about like, people, talking about regular stuff, it's hard to add into that conversation because, in the back of your mind, you're always thinking about, oh, what's my next scan going to be like? Am I going to need another surgery? Am I going to need more treatment? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would honestly agree. I mean, it's the same boat with college. I feel like just trying to assimilate back into school and, like college scenes of going out and partying. And sometimes I just like, I don't see the craze in like living life is partying, and, I'm trying to focus on getting my body back to where it was originally and not trying to harm it intentionally necessarily. But yeah, just I guess the whole college scene of you go to college and you're trying to meet new people, and it's what are you going to relate to them with, and like what is that icebreaker going to be, especially like if you have a prosthetic leg, like are you expected to talk about that? Are you expected to talk about why your hair is short or why you have a port scar or just things like that?
When like throughout treatment, like you kind of get into this like habit of thinking like everything's like really pointless, like just like little things like high school, like if you're going through high school or if you're going through whatever school, like I just thought everything was so, because you're in like that life or death type of situation, and you go back to school, like it's like it doesn't, I don't care, you know what I mean? So it's just like comparatively, like relatively, like it just really like flips your life upside down, and then you think of everything in a new way. So, and I also totally get what Valerie says, like whenever anyone asks you like how many siblings do you have, like because it always comes up, especially in college, like whenever you first meet like anyone, and like sometimes you're like, I don't even want to say, like, because I don't want to talk about this right now, like what if I don't want to talk about it, like I'll just say no, because like I don't want to, and it's not like they have to know. So
Yeah, sometimes they have to earn that space. And it's not that you're lying, it's just that they're not necessarily available for the truth at this point, nor have they earned that space for that truth in that moment.
Yeah, I took 100%, like really echo what everyone said, like 100%. Everyone here gets it, obviously, but yeah, it's one of those things where you don't want to you don't want to like burden someone, because it's like, you would say with like how are, kind of like the how are you conversation, you're like, well, like dumb, because like they're not going to understand, nor is it worth wasting your energy or time. But it's also difficult because it's like, am I being inauthentic to myself, because this is also a big part of who I am.
I just wanted to add on something to what not Valerie and Annika had said earlier. Like, I will go to school and my friends are just, talking about, typical high school stuff. And then I find myself consistently telling them, like, I have bigger issues and bigger things to worry about in my life right now. And it's like, I'd love to talk about this stuff with you guys, but like, it's kind of hard when there's just, life or death on the line consistently.
Also, I think when you tell people, especially non-adults, even young adults, but adolescents, young adults, they're not really equipped to take in that information. Like, you're having a hard enough trouble and you're in it, but to like give it to somebody who's this is not their space, and they can't possibly understand what this feels or looks like it's hard to give that to somebody, because what are they going to be like? Oh, okay, well, I'm sure it's going to be better. Okay, bye. And then that just makes it hurt more, because it makes you feel more alone, right? And what you're dealing with. Oh gosh, I hate this disease. Okay, I have a question for you. How do you tell the people you want to talk to? How do you talk to them about your cancer battle? Like now, what do you say when you, instead of I don't want to talk about it? And he's asking from a kid and a parent perspective. I can tell you from a parent perspective, something I would say to people, because I got so tired of like answering the question, and I appreciated it, especially when somebody genuinely wanted to know, how do I feel? But even talking about it, I would actually feel myself starting to throw up again, or like feel sick, or like exhausted or whatever. And I couldn't say high dose methotrexate one more time, or explain what limb salvage surgery was or anything. And I would say, I'm can we talk about something else? I need something else. Like, what did Jennifer Aniston do to her hair? Like, what color is Jennifer Aniston's hair right now? Like, what's going on in the real world? Or like, and not in a bad way, but like, just tell me some gossip. Like, tell me what's going on in your life. Like, tell me the petty stuff. I want the petty stuff. Like, I can't deal with, I have to put down this heavy mountain that I'm carrying around, this life and death like burden. I have to put it down at some point and just have something light. Like, tell me a joke. Tell me, I don't know, tell me something stupid, and I will appreciate that more than your deep and abiding concern for me. I really will. Like, so that was my thing, and it was a way to like make it light and funny. But like, I just can't talk anymore. Like, sometimes I physically couldn't talk anymore, and sometimes I just couldn't talk about it anymore. So that's my parent and patient perspective.
I think that kind of I feel like as a sibling like you, it's kind of even hard in the first place to get people to talk to you about it. So I don't think it's the problem. I don't really face a problem of like, oh, I don't want to talk about it all the time, because I wasn't really ever approached by like other people as much. So but I think like most people can pick up on social cues about like whether you don't want to talk about it, and you can just be like, I don't want to talk about this, like, and like I'll do that sometimes. Like, I just don't want to talk about it. Like, if I don't want to talk about it with that certain person or something, or if I don't like talking about it with that certain person, like, I think it's totally fine to just say that. And I don't really like, not like I don't really care if like they really want to, and if I don't want to, we're not going to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like not their thing, so you can't really, you have control over when you want to talk about it or not. So I think you should just say that and just be honest.
Adding on to what Annika says, I think something I thought about a lot with a lot of people, like, oh, how are your parents? How are your sister? Like, was never like, how are you? Even though they were talking to me. So I think like sometimes it's like really helpful just to like center the person, and like if like I felt comfortable over that person, because like I don't feel comfortable with everyone, I would like be honest about it. But if not, I would be like, oh, like, yeah, I'm fine. Or like if they brought up the how are your sibling, how is your parents, like I could have the autonomy and be like, thank you for your concern. I really appreciate it. But it's just really hard right now. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. And like usually people won't pry after that, but it's hard, I think, following up with Annika said, because it's like not many people care to begin with, that it's hard to like mitigate that balance, or just like I understand like people are caring. I don't want anyone to feel like they're shut out and like they don't want, I don't appreciate them extending their help. But at the same time, I think it's not selfish to like place your needs first and be like, you know, like not right, yes, I appreciate it, but not right now. Like that's, I don't think that's disrespectful at all. And that's something, you know, everything's like hindsight is 2020.
I think like going off of that too, like a problem, not a problem, but something that I've encountered like post-treatment is people trying to relate to me, so that they start talking about, oh, you know, I broke my leg once and it was really funny because I had to like get anesthesia or whatever. And that can be like a gesture of, you know, trying to relate, but at the same time it can kind of be triggering to hear other people's medical experiences when you don't necessarily want to compare that. So I think just echoing everyone, like sometimes it comes down to just having to say, I don't feel like talking about it right now, or just changing the subject.
I think for me, it's a little different because I think for me, whenever someone is like, well, how are you doing? Like, how's treatment going? I think I find myself oftentimes just like nonchalantly just like giving a bland answer of like, it's going okay. I'm doing okay. You know, like giving a 30-second, less than 30-second update of my life, because I feel like a robot like program just telling my story over and over and over again so many times to people who ask me. So I think for me, I mean, I don't necessarily like just tell them like I don't feel like talking about this anymore. I find myself more just giving a bland answer or a I'm okay answer kind of thing, like not going into detail, because if not, I'll probably break down and start crying.
Yeah, I totally get that. And Kara, not the same issue, but with limb salvage surgery, I can't tell you how many older men have come up to me and went, wow, that was quite a knee replacement you got. Or like, I had a knee replacement. I gotta tell you, like that was tough. like, well, it was actually a leg replacement, like my femur, my knee, my tibia, but okay, glad you made it through. And like you can't like, you know, I don't want to like not honor their experience, but this is not that. And sometimes you just have to go, okay, all right, I think we're at your floor now. You get off the elevator. Like it's always like those like elevator moments, or like anyway, I totally feel you. Okay, so there was one other question. Oh, triggers. Do you have any triggers like during treatment or post treatment, for both, for siblings and for patients? Like what was a trigger for you? And it can be like a light trigger, like for me, hand sanitizer or that soap that's like even in department store bathrooms, and like you wash your hands with it, it smells just like the hospital soap. Absolute trigger, I start gagging. That hand sanitizer smell, because it's always like coming right up toward your face. That, no thank you, can't do it. Certain foods that were like the ruin meal foods, and probably the color dusty rose, all triggers. Going near a hospital. I was at a hospital event yesterday here in Vermont, and just driving into the hospital, like my heart started racing. I had to like talk myself through, like, calm down, like you're not going in for treatment. This is not that. Anyway, any triggers for you guys?
For me, I guess for me, just in general, the surgery floor is just like, no, like don't take me down there if I don't have to. But I think the most specific one is, so since COVID started and with procedures in COVID, they started giving us this like citrus smelling thing that you're supposed to put in your nose before you go. I don't know what it's for exactly, but it smells like orange and it's a citrus smell. And I remember we had our windows, we put shutters for our windows. And the shutters, when they went in, when they were brand new, they had kind of that distinct citrus smell to it almost. And I was like, oh my God, like flashback, like that is my number one. Like not number one, but it is definitely one of my triggers that just leads me back to like the surgery floor. And it's like, oh my gosh.
I think my biggest ones are maple syrup. I have no idea why. I don't think I ever ate maple syrup on treatment. That might just be like a me thing. That might not be cancer. But also, I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but leucovorin to me tasted like marzipan. Everyone thought I was crazy for saying that, so I don't like looking at marzipan.
As a sibling, honestly, I have like, it's not like triggers related to treatment. It's more about giving news. So I got the news over text. So at school. So it's like any sort of urgent text or something from my parents or any urgent call freaks me out. Like I need to call, like if they say like, I need to talk to you right now, I'm like, what? Like about what though? Like, are we okay? So, or like any procedure that, or scan that, like any of, like if my parents have to go through anything. So that always like gets me anxious, I guess.
Yeah, I completely echo what Annika said. Like anytime when someone texts me, like or just randomly calls me, and like it's not like we talk every day or something. It's like, oh my gosh, like did I do something wrong? Is there like anything wrong? You know, like I ultimately think it's like something to do that I think I did, and also I think kind of like on like kind of our conversation before, something that triggered me a lot was like when people compare like dying to like their dog getting osteosarcoma and dying, because it's like not the same. So like again, like the situation, or like when it's like literally not even tangentially related, like their grandparents or something, like that triggers me too, because it's like it brings me back to like people like don't understand, and like and just, but like also trying to give them grace, because it's like not their fault that they don't understand, but like it's still really triggering, because like even though someone died in the past, it still has like long-term effects into daily lives.
Yeah. Okay, we're super overtime, but like I could keep having this conversation. This is how our junior board meetings go to. I'm like, I don't want to hang up yet. Like this is so good. Like it's almost a therapy. Like we're getting work done on our junior board calls, but like it's always turns into some conversation where I'm like, oh, this is so good, which is really the impetus for this conversation. So I think to wrap up this conversation, it seems and it sounds like one of the most important things, especially as a parent and as a sibling, is to have a conversation with your parents, with your family, and like ongoing check in. And this is how I'm feeling. And can you tell me how this feels for you? And it's a really hard and can be really awkward conversation to have, but it can be also a really transformational conversation to have, to just make space to understand where each other are coming from through asking these sort of questions. And we didn't even get to the one that we were talking about kind of a lot before, which was touch. So like, how do you want to be touched? Like if you're in treatment, or your siblings going through something, like, do you want to be touched? And I know for me, like, I love having my hand held, but like if I was nauseous and curled up in a ball, like don't touch me. Like you're just bringing me back. Like I'm trying to like close out the world over here, and like somebody touching me like just jars me out of my happy, well, my unhappy like little ball that I'm trying to like just breathe calmly and be in this space. So we didn't even talk about that, but that I want to add in. If you're thinking about having a conversation with your parent or with a sibling, or with your child who's a patient, to have a conversation about touch can really help stave off any uncomfortable or triggering moment where it can cause anger, it can cause nauseousness, it can cause resentment, it can really, touch is a really important thing to understand here, because your body is suffering and your body is really particular about what it wants and what it doesn't want. So these conversations are so important. And so I hope as a result of listening to these 4 brilliant human beings that's a good takeaway. Thank you so much, Valerie, Ali, Annika, and Kara. I am so glad that you're on the junior board and you share of yourself so wholeheartedly, and you're really helping others, not just today, but for a long time to come. So thank you, thank you. The next Osteobites is on November 18th. We're talking with Dr. Julia Glade-Bender and Dr. Philemon de la Cruz of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. They're going to be talking to us about a new clinical trial for relapsed and refractory osteosarcoma. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter via our website at mibagents.org, and follow us on social media so you can get all the intel. We'll send that information to you. That's going to be a really good one. Until then, thanks again, you guys. Thanks for being here, all of our participants in this webinar, but thanks most of all again and always to Valerie, Ali, Annika, and Kara. These are not easy topics to discuss, but you made it better by discussing it, and I'm just always and forever grateful for you. So thanks, everybody.
Like and share, and if you like this video, then check out some more on our YouTube channel.